All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as of right now, for the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development, AWD1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class, I'm going to start going through our textbook, ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS by Naylor. Now, I'm doing these all on the fly. All right, so I'm going to do whatever they do in the book, and I'm going to do it, like I said, on the fly. When we get to the class that starts somewhere in late August, then what's going to happen at that time is I am going to be, for lack of better words, almost reproducing what I'm doing now. All right, so Chapter 1 is building a basic MVC website. In this first chapter, you'll learn how to quickly get up and running with ASP.NET MVC by building a simple website using scaffolding. So again, the author starts by giving some background information. Notice again, this book covers Microsoft's version of Model View Controller, ASP.NET MVC. It says at the time of writing the production version is ASP.NET MVC5. There is also a chapter very late in the book on MVC6. MVC again stands for Model View Controller. MVC applications are made up of the following three components. What you will find is your model. Your folder that you create with models will hold source code. They will hold .cs files, CS for C#. They will hold your classes. Your classes will model the data of the application. That data almost always will be in the form of a database. You can see there that it says these are often referred to as POCOs, which is a plain old CLR object. And not that I have to do this, but I'll break away now and then. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in CLR and I'm going to hit enter. All right. Now, I want the Common Language Runtime. There we go. So that's what CLR stands for, is Common Language Runtime. It's the virtual machine component of Microsoft's .NET framework. For lack of better words, this is how it was explained to me. All right? That, for example, when you write a Java program and you write Java source code, and you want that source code to eventually be broken down into the machine language that the computer can understand, those zeros and ones. It goes through a process that's coordinated by what's called the JVM, or the Java Virtual Machine. Well, for ASP.NET, what happens is the stuff gets broken down, and I believe it's right before it goes to regular machine language. It goes into what's called MISL, M-S-I-L, which is Microsoft Intermediate Language. All right? And what happens is the Common Language Runtime is, I believe at least, pretty much what goes, what you run your source code through to get it into the MISL. Now, that's probably a lot more than you needed to hear, but you've at least heard it. All right, so the models, again, they're, for lack of better words, just code. The views are the template files. They're the view files that are typically used to generate HTML that will be sent back to the user. Remember, we've talked about this in other classes. The user sits at his or her computer and types in, for example, in the address bar, www.amazon.com, because they want to go out to Amazon and buy something. All right? When they hit enter, they may not just type in www, they might type in http:// www.amazon.com or just amazon.com. It doesn't matter. Regardless, that is going to send a hypertext transfer protocol request that'll go over the internet, all right, and it'll be grabbed by a server in Amazon. Eventually, that will go out to the equivalent of a controller that we'll talk about next. That controller will figure out, based on what the user wants to do, that they want to order a book, do they want to order a video, do they want to order something else, do they want to do something else. All right, it'll call the correct controller, and that controller will be responsible for calling the correct model. Now, it doesn't say it in here. Oh, yes, it does. But models not only model the data, they also enforce the business logic. They say such as a shopping basket. All right, well, what does that mean? Well, what that means as an example is that if I've got something in my shopping basket, all right, I'm not going to have it delivered to me, or the order won't be taken until I've proven that I can pay for it. And the way that we work today, I'll have to prove that electronically. You know, I work for a college where the business logic, all right, the business rules say that you can't take classes unless you pay for them, or unless somebody pays for them. All right. Now notice in here, these views should not contain any business logic. Not only that, the views and the models should not talk to one another. That's what the controller is for. The controller processes the incoming request, that HTTP request. It goes out, calls the right model, obtains the data model data, takes that and returns that data to the view for displaying it as HTML. So there's no direct communication, or should not be, between the model and the view. The information comes in, goes to the controller, goes out to the model, does its thing, sends it back to the controller, controller gets it ready, sends it out to the view, view sends it back to the end user as an HTTP response. So it says here, the examples in this book will help broaden your understanding of these definitions that we just talked about. MVC has its origins from Smalltalk from the late 70s. In other words, this isn't brand new. All right? Not that that's a real big thing one way or the other. It's not. All right? But just so indeed you are aware of that. All right? Okay. So, entity framework is what's called an object relational mapping framework that's going to be used throughout this book. It says throughout this book, entity framework is used in a code-first approach. And I do want to make sure you understand this. All right? The verbiage pretty much makes it clear, but I want to make sure that you understand the difference between code first and database first. With code first, which it sounds like we're going to be using in here. All right, so with code first, you write the model classes, and they, we'll say for lack of better words, create the database. With database first, as just mentioned, you create the database first, then you write the model classes. So let's talk about advantages of each one of these. With code first, if I know how to write C#, and I know how to basically write and work with ASP.NET, I don't have to know how to create databases, because they'll be, for lack of better words, they'll be created for me. If I am a database person, I can write my databases first. All right, and then have some of the other stuff, possibly the controllers and the views, at least the beginnings of them, created for me. So there are advantages and, I'm not even going to say disadvantages, but there's advantages of doing it both ways. Now, we're going to be using the current available version of the entity framework. Just so you see this, if I go out to Visual Studio, and I will come in, I guess I'll have to probably start a new project. So File, New Project, and I think this is the one we're going to create is called Baby Store. All right, I'm just going to throw it right onto my desktop. All right, so that's going to be my location. All right, I'll call it Baby Store 0 because I'll be creating one in class also. I'm not going to use a Git repository for these examples. We will use one in class. All right, so I'm just going to click OK there. The reason I'm telling you that, I'm going to make it an MVC. I'm not going to do anything with authentication. I'm not going to host it in the cloud. I'm just going to click OK. Boom, it's creating stuff. What you'll see over here in just a minute is I'm going to have the beginning of an MVC project. So it takes about 30 seconds to set that up. App data is typically where your database will go. App start has a lot of things, including the route config, which tells the program, how to do things by default. Content has your CSS files, and it also has your images. Controllers will have our controller files. Fonts will have our glyphicons, any special font stuff we have. Models will have our models. Scripts will have our JavaScript, our jQuery, etc. Views will have our view files. All right? Now that's very quick, so why did I even tell you that? Well, I told you that because what I want you to get out of this is, and what they're talking about in this section, is if I right mouse click on here and go to Manage Nuget Packages, like that, or I can close this. If I click on Tools, Nuget Packet Manager, Manage Packages, I get the same thing. All right, if I go to Browse and I type in here Entity Framework, all right, so Browse, Entity Framework. It says that right now, as of today, all right, which is Wednesday, the 23rd of May, 2018, the current entity framework is version 6.2. You'll notice it has almost 44 million downloads. That's the one we'll want. I already have it installed, or I thought I did, on my system. All right, there it is. You can always tell because if you look right here, there's an uninstall option. All right. In fact, these are earlier versions. Somewhere in here it'll ask me if I would want to uninstall it. I don't. All right. It says here, as mentioned, code first is an approach to using entity framework where the model is first developed in code classes. This is ideal where either no database exists or the person doing the developing doesn't know anything about databases, etc. From Entity Framework 6.1, and remember we're using 6.2, it is also possible to use code first with an existing database by generating classes based on the existing database. They'll talk about this later on in the book. So what software do we need? Well, we're going to be using Visual Studio 2015, the Community Edition. When you install this, notice local DB should automatically be included. The author says, however, on Windows 10, this does not appear to be the case, and you must install it separately. If that's the case, you go out to the URL here and do the install. So the first thing we need to do is to create a website using ASP.NET and Entity Framework. We want to create a new project in Visual Studio by doing File, New Project from the menu bar. And we want to make sure, it says ensure you select Install Templates, Visual C# Web when you do this. So in other words, do what I just did. So I came here, I've already done this, but I could have done File, New, Project. Again, go out to Visual C#, go out to Web, and choose this. That's exactly what they're saying right there. All right? So ASP.NET Web Application, ASP.NET Web Application. All right? Name the project Baby Store. I called mine Baby Store 0, and I clicked Continue, or clicked OK, so I was allowed to continue. As it says, you will see another window as shown in Figure 1-2 on the next page. In this window, select MVC from the templates and ensure that authentication is set to individual user accounts. And I don't think I did that. So let's go back and do this. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go over to here. There was my Baby Store 0. I'm just going to get rid of it. All right. Now I'm going to create it again right now, but I'm going to call it BS for Baby Store, not for the other BS. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say File, New, Project, Visual C# Web, ASP.NET Web Application, .NET Framework. I'll call this BS for Baby Store, and I'm saving it to my desktop. All right. And you know what? I wasn't going to do this, but I will create a Git repository for this. All right. And I'm going to say OK. So now I want to make sure it's set to MVC here and here. I want to change the authentication to, I guess it already was, individual user accounts, which is the default. So I could have worked with the one I had. Not a problem. I'm going to click OK, and the magic over here will build everything that has to be built for me. Again, it takes 15 to 30 seconds or so. And there it is. I don't need this page that comes up by default. So that's what's there. All right. So we just did all this. And here is a short little picture of what got created for us. All right, this is what's shown in the book on page 5. All right, if we click on the controllers folder, this is what we see. If we click on the models folder, this is what we see. If we click on the home folder here, this is what we see. And the shared folder, this is what we see. So let's double check that. I'm going to teach this class very deliberately. So there's our models. Those are the 3. Our views, those are the ones shown there. Our controllers, there they are. And under home, there's that stuff. And under shared, there's that stuff. The same exact stuff that you see in the book on pages 4 and 5. Those models that we see in there, all right, the account view and the identity and the managed view, we'll use those later on in the book when we talk about authentication and authorization. All right. So let's run what we have right now. So we can choose build and build solution, but that doesn't actually run it for us. What is it? The other one that we can use is a test run. All right, I don't remember which one it is. Let's put it this way. I always click this one right here. I think you can click the F5 function key also. But if I click right here, this is going to run our default project. It brings it up in what's called IIS Express. All right. So it'll run on a random port. With mine, it's 55260. And here's the project. Not real much in here. It's just some standard stock code. And I can go and click on About, and I get a simple About page. Contact, I get a simple Contact page. You'll notice that whether I'm at Home, About, or Contact, this doesn't change up here. All right. And let's see, can I register? So I'm going to click on Register. We'll worry about all this stuff later, but I just wanted to show it to you. So I'm going to come in here in my email, jpscott@rankin.edu. Password, I'm going to say, I know it's got to be at least one uppercase character, so I'm going to say hello. And it's got to have a number and a special character. So I'm making mine hello with a capital H, 123, comma. Hello with a capital H, 123, comma. And I'm going to attempt to register. May or may not work. All right, it says, do I want Chrome to remember it? No, I don't care. All right. So it looks like that worked. Notice, hello jpscott@rankin.edu. I am now logged in. I can log off. Thought I could log off from there. Oh, it's asking me to log in again. So now, jpscott@rankin.edu, hello, 123, comma. Hit enter, boom, I'm back in again. Okay, and you can see how this changes. We've got what's called a hamburger menu, and I can still go to my About, my Contact, etc. All right, I don't really need to log in right now, so I'm going to log off. Okay. All right. And all I'm trying to show you there is what the author wanted us to do at that particular time was to come in and run it. Okay? Again, it runs on a random port. All right? We'll talk about what all this stuff means as we go on. All right. How the home page works. This is the middle of page 6, I believe. Yes, it is. Now, it says the home page in figure 1.4 is shown because the website made this request. In fact, just so you see it, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to run this again. I don't want that hamburger menu to show anymore, and I'm not sure why it's still showing, but it is, and I wish I wouldn't have done that. All right. But the point is this. It is right now going to right here. So when I ran the program automatically went right there. Your port number that's right there, the chances of that being 55260 are remote. Yours will probably be something else, just so you're aware of that. It's no big thing. All right. But where we actually went was home index. So we've got our choice. We can type any one of these three things to go and look at our home page. And I'm telling you this because I want to show you all three of them. All right. So, oops, I guess it was there. We can go either, come on. We can go here, okay, in which case it defaults to the home controller and the index method of the home controller, or we can go here, which says go to our home controller, and it'll default to the index method, or we can specify not only the controller, but the method to run. So all three of these will run our home page. All right, and again, this is just a random port number, the right here. Localhost is your machine, of course, so yours may or may not have this number. Probably it'll be something else. But again, the takeaway is this, and this, and this. And right now, at least, all of these will open or run the same file. So what you'll see is I'm here. If I put /home and hit enter, not a thing changes. If I put /home/index and hit enter, not a thing changes. All right? They're all aliases, for lack of better words right now. They all run the same thing. All right. It says this URL that's here, the one I just showed you, tells the Model View Controller web app that the request has been made to show the action method of the home controller. Now, how does it know that we want the home controller and the index method? Well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if you take a look right here at underneath where it says app start, and if I go to the route config file and I look down here, it says to map, and it says by default the controller I want you to go to is home. By default, the action I want you to, or the method I want you to run, is index. And right now we haven't talked yet about this, which is optional anyway. So if we had another controller in here, let's just say that was called hello. So it was our hello controller. We could change that to hello there, just to hello right there. We could change that to hello. And if the action we wanted to run would be something that would be called hi, we could change that to hi. Then instead of running the home page and the index method of the home page, instead of running the home controller and the index method or the index action, it would run the hello controller and the hi method or action. All right? And that's pretty much what they're saying in here. So let's look. They're saying in here that right now, all right, it says in the views controller name, method name, okay, the contents, the contents of the file in controllers, homecontroller.cs should look like this. Let's double check. In fact, let's make this a lot narrower for now. And instead of route config, let's close that. And let's bring up our home controller, which, as you'd guess, would be under controllers. All right. So, don't want that. Want that. All right. So it says we should have here using system, using system.collections.generic, using system.link, using system.web, using system.web.mvc. Please notice that as of right now, these first four using statements are gray, which means that as of right now, they are not being used. They will be added as we go on in the book. All right. Namespace. I called mine BS instead of baby store, so mine's BS.controllers as opposed to baby store controllers. Public class home controller. This says our home controller inherits from, and that's what the colon is, so it inherits from the built-in class called controller. All right? And it says we've got something right here called index that returns what's called an action result. So it's public, meaning it can be called both from within this class and from other classes. The name of the method is index. It requires no parameters, and it returns an action result. That action result that it returns is view. Then we've got our about, and our about that you see right here again returns an action result. Again, it has nothing passed into it. It has a message in something called viewBag, and that message says your application description page, and then that returns a view. Then we get this contact, which again requires no parameters and again returns an action result, and it has a thing there that says your contact page. So your application description page, your contact page, and that also returns a view. All right, well, why am I telling you that? There's a method as always to my madness, but I want to run this again to notice that when I go from here and I type in about, and I guess it's because I stopped the run here. But when I go here and I go to about and it says your application description page, that line that you see right there, all right, that line was created with this line. And the thing that says your contact page on the contact page, that is this line. All right, you might say, well, what about that other stuff? What about this one Microsoft way, etc.? All right, we will get to that in just a little bit. All right, if we go here to our page that's called about.cshtml, there's the rest of that code. Use this area to provide additional information. If we go to contact.cshtml, that's that address and those hyperlinks that were in there. We'll go through all this stuff as we go on. I'm trying, it's chapter 1. I've already spent 32 minutes on this. All right? More than I actually thought I would spend. But I'd like to go over it in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage so that ideally, at least, it makes sense to you from the get-go. All right, so I just mentioned that add or the about and the contact pages. All right, they both use that thing called viewBag. All right, and viewBag is something kind of special to ASP.NET. All right, and viewBag, for lack of better words, kind of look at it as a big container that can hold anything. It doesn't matter what kind of information it is. It can hold virtually everything and anything. It can hold a message. All right. It can hold a title. It can hold a message. And there actually is other stuff that it can hold too. For now, we'll just leave it at that. It says if you look at the code for the about.cshtml, you're going to see that stuff that's in there, kind of what I just showed you. All right. So as it says on the top of page 8 here, it says the about view displaying information passed from the controller via the viewBag. So the author here on the middle of page 8 defines the viewBag as a dynamic object, an important distinction to make. It's dynamic, meaning that it can be set while the program is running. All right? And as it says there, it's one way of passing data to a view. It's meant for passing very small pieces of information and not a lot of information due to the way that it's inherently set up and, as it says, its dynamic nature. It's not strongly typed, meaning that it can hold anything. And there's no IntelliSense that's available. You can't say viewbag dot and have the IntelliSense show everything that's available to you. It says the recommended practice is to use a strongly typed view model to pass several pieces of data to a view at once, which will be covered when we get to Chapter 3. All right. Now the routing stuff, some of this I've already shown you, but it's okay. I showed you in that route config, I showed you this stuff. All right, I just jumped the gun a little bit. And as the author says, the code that we're interested in, this is the top of page 9 in the chapter, is in the routes.maproute method. It defines a route called default with that URL. As it says, that URL instructs the site to expect a controller name followed by an action followed by an ID. All right. Then we've got defaults that says if we don't supply a controller, have it default to home. If we supply a controller but we don't supply an action, have it default to index. All right. And again, the ID is optional. If we want to use an ID here, all right, if we want to use an ID here, this is how we can do that. So the author says we'll alter the site to use an optional, all right, to use an optional ID parameter. So what we want to do is we want to go in and change, let's go into our About page. All right, let's go into our About page. So about.cshtml, I'm sorry. We want to go into the home controller and the About in here. So this message says right now, your application description page. All right, and then we want to enter after that, you entered the ID space plus ID. We don't get any error messages. All right. Until we get to here, because it says ID, I don't know what that is. So notice it says here if we want, we can show a potential fix. And it says we could make a field in there, all right, or we could basically get rid of it, but we want to put it up here. We want to pass that in as a string, and it'll be called ID. Notice as soon as I put the D in, boom, that goes away. So, as mentioned here on the bottom of page 9, we're telling the method to process a parameter passed into it called ID. This corresponds to that optional third parameter that we saw up at the top of the page here. That is this. ID equals URL parameter optional. Now what we'll do is we'll go and we'll save this. Always should save before you run it. Typically it'll save for you, but why take the chance? So I'm going to run this. And I'm going to navigate over, once I do this, to home about, and I'll put a number in there, 447. Just made that up. It didn't mean anything. See that? You entered the ID 447. This was what we just added right there. All right. That right there, you entered the ID 447. That right there corresponds to this right here. So the result of that, they just use 7. Doesn't matter. So we can come back here. We can change that from 447 to 7. Hit enter. Boom. You entered the ID 7. All right. So that is, the author is saying, is the same thing as we turn up to page 10 that we see right here. On the rest of page 10 here, ASP.NET MVC automatically matches any parameters in the HTTP request to method parameters if they have the same name, and it's case insensitive. What does that mean? All right, that means we can come back to this, and notice we put home and about were all in caps, or I'm sorry, uppercase H and uppercase A. I can say home, about, 7, all in lowercase, let's make it 77, and boom, it works. I could put it, I don't know why I do this, but I could put it all in uppercase. Do a 7 again, and it works. All right, we're just going to stick basically with either title case or lowercase. So, a couple more things, and then we'll put this first chapter to rest. The purpose of the layout page. The author says here, you will have noticed that when we navigate to different pages, the website has the same heading and the same navigation menu. This is achieved by using a layout page. All right. The layout page is contained in views shared _ layout. So let's take a look at that. Stop the run here. And there is views, all right, shared _ layout.cshtml. And there it is. This is the stuff that we're told we want to have on each page. Right there. This layout page, it can be modified and it will be modified. It's not mandatory that each page uses this layout page, but at least as we start, that's the way we'll do it. All right, just to show you this real quick, we've got here home, about, and contact. And let's just change this to my home, about us, and I don't know, contact info as an example. All right. This is the name of the controller. This is the name of the method we want it to call. And I always get this messed up. Well, I'm going to see if this gives me an error or not. How's that? So let's run this. Project again. See if we get an error. If I get an error, I gave it to you wrong. It's no big thing. All right, we look over here. Notice it was correct. My home, about us, and contact info. So by me coming in and changing these from home, about, and contact, you saw immediately the associated change. All right, made on the page. All right. The author says here, if you open this file, you will see it contains HTML elements containing site navigation, the @render body, which I didn't even go over with you, but this down here, @render body, that thing that's down pretty close to the bottom there, all right? That's responsible for displaying the content of the view that we're requesting. And as mentioned here in your text, the website knows to use this as the main layout because of the contents of views underscore viewstart.cshtml. Let's look at that. All right. Close a couple of these out here. Just leave the last one open. So, stop my run. And under views, I've got this view start. And that says use, our layout is going to be done using that file. If I don't want any layout whatsoever, okay, for right now, I'm going to do a Control X. I'm going to put in there null. I don't want any layout. All right, what did that do? Let's run it and look. I think I needed a semicolon there, so I may get an error. Yep, that's why. So let's run it again. That's okay. Let's put a semicolon in. Okay, save and run it again and see how different it does or does not look. See that? Kind of looks like a website that doesn't have any CSS in it yet, because that's basically what it is. All right? So it's the same stuff, just has no formatting. So if I go back and change it back to what it was, this says go over to the views folder, under views, and find the shared folder, and use this layout.cshtml. All right? We want to use that. So notice if I run it again now, it's back. Okay. So, to finish up chapter 1 here, to finish it up, in this chapter, the author gave a brief overview of ASP.NET, MVC, and the entity framework. In addition, he showed you how to create a project. This is the baby project that we'll use throughout the book. All right? And he explained the basics of the website, including what a controller is, what a view is, what view bag is, what routing is. We have not yet touched on the model part. We'll get to that later. The author says, I kept this chapter brief since the rest of the book will explain these concepts in more detail. The idea behind this class that you're in is that you are going to be learning how to create a data-driven website. All right? It says, notice this chapter does not contain any explanation of models. That is what we will cover in the next chapter by diving straight in and adding some products and categories to our baby store. All right? Now, what happened here, just so you know, is when I came in here with this login and register, all right, once I did this, it put that information into a database. I've got to figure out where that is. All right, and it could be that it's in one of these controllers or in one of these views. I don't know. So it could be under account. So it could be in here someplace. I don't know. All right. And it could be, someplace else, the home controller or whatever. I don't know. But I don't like it. I like it when it runs and it shows me everything. So if I have to, I'll get rid of this particular project and redo it. All right. In fact, that might be the fastest way to do this. I'm just going to stop here. Again, there's a better way of doing it than what I'm showing you. But I'm going to grab this BS and I'm going to throw it in there. Start up my Visual Studio again. File, new, project, Visual C# Web, ASP.NET. let's just call it BS2 because it is the second one I've created. Keep the directory, keep the Git, MVC project. We do want individual user accounts, so that's okay. All right. And we want this to be chosen. We're not going to do any unit tests because we're not told to. I'm clicking OK here. So this is our initial site, and when I go and run it again, now it should have the three different page options: home, about, and contact on the page there without using that hamburger menu. And it still is showing it there with that. Good golly, Miss Molly. I'll have to figure out how to fix that. It's probably real simple. That's why I can't figure it out. Okay? So we'll look at that. All right. Now, with that said, what I am going to do, I'm going to close all of these. And I'm going to come in here and close this. And I am going to come in and go to my Team Explorer. All right. And I'm going to go to Changes. It says there are no unstaged changes in the working directory. Well, I'm going to put up here Chapter 1 completed. Built the initial baby store site. Learned about controllers, views, view bag. What else did we go over in here? Let's start with some MVC terminology. All right. Again, how about created instead of built? Created the initial project. All right. So we learned about view bag. We also learned about routing. And the main layout page. That's good. All right. It says there are no changes. That's because I did not make any changes in the file. I don't even know if it'll save now with that. So let's go back to our Solution Explorer. Let's go back into our, we'll go back into here. We'll go back into under our views, shared. We'll go into our layout. And instead of application name, let's just use the name we're going to use, which is Baby Store. Save this. Now let's run it again and make sure that it's up here, instead of it saying application name, it now says Baby Store. And it does. Okay, so I'm going to stop that run. And I'm going to stop the run here. Now when I go back to the Team Explorer, all right, notice it says I've changed that. So my action, I'm just going to tell it to commit all. So I now have that. And when I look under actions and I view my history, there it is. Chapter 1 completed, created the initial baby store site, learned about MVC terminology, controllers, views, view bag, routing, and the main layout page. All right, that's it for Chapter 1. When I come back again, I will be going over, here's a surprise, Chapter 2. And in Chapter 2, we will discuss creating views, controllers, and a database from the model classes. All right, I'll be back with that shortly.